Priyanka, since you talked about the fact that there is an it is a humanitarian crisis, it's a health crisis, but it's also an economic crisis. These two have led to a lockdown, which is the right thing to do, has led to a economic crisis. And I know before you became the member of parliament, you had organized for the party towards the end of last year. You brought all the business people of Maharashtra together. I think it was October, September, around that time. It could be November.
January. Yeah.
Maybe January. Yeah, it was just before. So you clearly you've been an entrepreneur. Tell me how is the government thinking about mitigating the negative economic impact that COVID has, specifically in terms of Maharashtra. And Maharashtra is the financial capital of the country. It's the commerce capital of the country. Stock markets are there, big business people are there. It's a big economy by itself. So whether it's the agriculture economy, whether it's the markets, whether it's SME entrepreneurs, what is the government of Maharashtra thinking?
So just before the COVID crisis struck us, the chief minister was very clear that if India is working towards creating a $5 trillion economy, Maharashtra would be the 1/5 partner in that. We will move towards a $1 trillion economy. His focus was very clear that it will come through industry participation, big industries. It will come through small and medium enterprises. It will come through smaller businesses, and we need to ensure that we are catering to all the policy loopholes that exist. We will try and ease them out for them, and we were very much on track doing that. Unfortunately, COVID has struck. COVID has struck not just India, but globally. It is creating a huge economic crisis. Stock markets falling, businesses shutting, businesses creating a problem. So the chief minister has created an economic task force, which has one of the best minds. Ajit Ranade is a part of it. Then we have Mr. HDFC, Mr. Deepak Parekh on board, and lots of other economists who know what they're talking and bringing to the table to mitigate this entire issue, and how the way forward for Maharashtra to continue aiming for what it was aiming for earlier. Of course, it would be at much lower pace, but we are very clear that whether it's our agriculture, whether it's our farmers, whether it's our small businesses, whether there's going to be no trade-off, that we are going to allow anyone to shut down in this crisis. In fact, we are only going to come up with supportive policies which will continue to get them going and give them that sense of confidence that the government stands by them. We understand the problems that prevail. We are also ensuring that none of them sack their employees or retrench them. We've written to them that we all are going through this crisis. Everybody has to put their best efforts in. So we are seeing that by and large, most of the industries are cooperating. Smaller enterprises are hit, but they are not retrenching staff as of now. Media has seen something like this happen, and we'd hope that media barons would understand and take up some responsibility for their employees. But however, whatever the challenges that prevail, we will handhold most of these businesses and will ensure they're back on their feet again. That has been the spirit of Maharashtra, and we totally plan to continue with this spirit and only enhance and ensure that the spirit continues.
So I want to respond here, Priyanka ji. So, I want to say, when I speak privately I'm first generation, you went to Narsi Monji, right? You did your commerce from Narsi Monji. I went to a business school called MDI, right? And, I started Exchange for Media, then acquired Business World. And I talked to lots of entrepreneurs. See, it's the right intent not to let people go, to hold on with them. But let me also tell you that businesses' revenues have dried up. And of course, in media, it has dried up by 80%. I can say that because I have a vantage point of understanding it. Plus, as business world, I understand the impact. So, it's okay for the government to say, don't sack. As I say, it's the right things to say. But how do you think a SME that lives on revenues and is not funded can kind of continue without having revenues for a long time? I think it's a good thing to say, but it's a very difficult thing to. You also have to place yourself in the entrepreneur's shoes. So I would like to say that to you. I'm sure as an entrepreneur you understand what I'm saying. But yes, we are holding tight. We have taken measures that make sure that we survive and hopefully thrive beyond COVID. But yes, it's very tough as an entrepreneur. And I speak for at least 2,000 entrepreneurs that I know.
I can totally tell you, and I totally understand where you're coming from. And being an entrepreneur myself, I can understand how difficult it is to last from one month to another and to continue this entire flow of money to continue. Cash inflow and cash outflow too. That has stopped. Of course, inflow has stopped, but the outflow we are expecting all to continue, which may be a little difficult at this point in time, and totally understand this. But considering just how people have been large-hearted about a lot of things and been more humanitarian, looked at it from a more humanitarian perspective, sure. I think they are also trying. Well, I cannot say for all.
So that people are trying.
Yeah, everyone's trying. All the government is saying
and
is
nobody likes to let people go. Nobody
yes,
likes
exactly.
To, and at some stage, the businesses will be back to at least, if not
exactly
100%,
now
70, 80% back.
Exactly.
And this is now time for transformation and helping each other.
Now, for example,
but cash flows are under tremendous pressure in every sector. I mean, in travel, QSR, they're gone, they're zero. But in other sectors, they're down to single digit.
I agree with you. I'll just give you a few examples of how people in Maharashtra. Now, for example, the restaurant industry. Now, everybody knows Mumbai's rental values are sky high. Now, restaurants take these places on rent. They have the additional expense of employees. Of course, it's a people-driven industry, so they have to have many employees. Hospitality industry. So I have seen something which is extremely amazing, where they are trying not to retrench people. So what they do is they end up supporting by giving meals to the needy. They end up using, so like a Taj, of course, they have the backing of Tatas with them. Entrepreneurs like who own these restaurants, they're trying to ensure that their cooks are
everybody is doing their bit.
So everybody is doing their best. Of course, it's a tough challenge. Imagine as an entrepreneur, if it's difficult for me, how difficult it is for state governments to ensure that everybody who's going without a job right now, the daily wage laborers, are fed 3 times a day. Their medical treatments are in place. Their house is in place. Their camps they have camps which are safe. So those are things which we all realize, that there's a catch-22 situation for all. What are you allowing to let go, and what are you all wanting to retain, is a call that every individual will have to take. But in terms of policies, we will do everything. We will handhold, especially those industries which are people intrinsic, which are people driven, whether it's going to be textiles, whether it is going to be hospitality, whether it is going to be tourism, whether it's a small entrepreneur. We will ensure that we handhold them, and we will create policies. We will create enough, I would say, liquidity in terms of being able to get finance to be able to survive, and like you said, survive and then thrive. So those are things that we are looking at, aiming at. Of course, there's no one formula that fits all, but we will try and ensure that retrenchment is as minimal as possible.
Jyotsna?
So in regards to the lockdown that's happening right now, I wanted to know, will it likely be extended to a certain date? Can you talk about that? Is that something that you'd be able to comment on?
As of now, today the Prime Minister did speak to the various chief ministers.
Yeah.
And whatever I've been reading on social media, all the chief ministers are in favor of extending the lockdown. But we also need to understand, there is, like we were talking about economy, that economy cannot continue to be in suspension forever. We would need to identify zones which are easy to do business. I was reading somewhere, I'm not too sure, Mumbai Airport has created a policy where they will ensure social distancing happens while hygiene is maintained. So if maybe industries also come forward and take that responsibility, maybe there would be a sense of confidence that we can build, not just in the governments, but even in people, that everything is being looked after and we'll be able to open up in a staggered way. So maybe the red zones do not immediately open up. They take time and they open up in phases. But where we have seen that there is no instance of COVID to spread, or COVID to recur, or COVID patients being recorded every day, those are areas which I think we should open up for small entrepreneurs, small businessmen, medium and small enterprises, so that they are not endlessly suffering. And then, of course, bringing the labor back into the workforce is also something that we'll need to understand. The migrant labor force that are in various states, they are there for their economic reasons.
While Maharashtra and the Maharashtra CM has done well, is there any other state or state CM that you also think has done very well and you as a state can learn from it?
I think Kerala has done decently well. I would say, as much as I might have a political difference with Yogi Adityanath, but in Uttar Pradesh, the way he is reassuring his people who are working in other states that he is taking care of them, he is going to bring them back, I think that is very reassuring. So there are some points which I think are very interesting about some chief ministers, best practices. Even in Singapore, Maharashtra is trying to get in. So we're looking at best practices globally as well as state-wise, and I have no hesitation.
So I also wanted to know that what do you think are the learnings from this crisis for us as a nation?
A couple of things I want to mention, and even from a woman's perspective, that we need to understand that women are carrying the most of the burden right now. And I'd be very upfront about it, simply because when we talk about multitasking, and we talk about it very jokingly, that, oh, women multitask. But we must understand women's workload has increased way more than what perhaps male member of the house has. Besides their work, they're also struggling to manage with their children, with their extra activities that would have to go into it. Also, the economic consequences, because what will happen once these industries come back, businesses come back, the biggest loser will always end up being a woman employee who is perhaps one of the junior employees or junior ranking managers, etc. It's easier for them to let go by saying that, she's supported by a husband who's employed at this point in time, so we can let her go. The male needs to continue working because he's a sole earning member of his particular family. So those are things that we also have to keep in mind. A mental stress of a woman during such instances, where she's managing her work hours as well as balancing her family at home, and with no help at home, having to struggle through it all. That's another challenge. Then violence that is happening against women. There could be forced pregnancies, for all we know. The marital rape as of now in India is still not considered a criminal offense. So those are things India would also need to be looking at from a woman's perspective. In terms of learnings, I would say India definitely needs to up its game on health infrastructure. India needs to really up its game on digital connectivity. We are all digitally active, but not digitally connected. This work from home ideas that have come up through Zoom links and Microsoft Teams, etc., can become a part of places where maybe you do not need face-to-face interaction at all given points in time. What we need to up our game also is best practices in education. How do we leverage our population and use this population to be able to become an army in itself? Army as not the military army, but an army ready
it's a force multiplier
on various fronts. Yes, on various fronts. Right. So those, I think, are the biggest learnings for any government.
India.
And more importantly, and the most important, I'd say, I think our corporates have really stepped up their work and their end of being able to contribute as part of their responsibilities. And they have stepped up to the challenge. How do we ensure that moving forward, public-private partnerships are as successful as we are seeing it on ground at this point in time? The kind of engagement on various formats that we are seeing without any, I would say, feeling of, I would say, favoritism is unique. And I think we need to implement this in other areas, like I mentioned, the areas such as women's rights, women's empowerment, education, digital, creating community.
Right.
Another learning that we are creating health infrastructures.
Fantastic, Priyanka ji. I want to ask you, my last question is, where would be Miss Priyanka Chaturvedi 10 years from now? because you'll be in Bombay. But,
and
then in terms of your contribution to the society, in terms of your career, in terms of your ambition, what do you aspire to? And at the end of the day, you have manifested the universe for yourself. You are a member of parliament. You are. So what do you wish to manifest over the next 10 years?
You know, when I was elected to the Rajya Sabha and I got my certificate, I did not even know that 3 days down the line I'll be housebound and there'll be not. I wouldn't be able to go take oath, which is absolutely fine. So for me to predict what I will be, but I know one thing: when you have honesty of intent and when your idea in leadership or being in politics is about creating value for your nation and people who reside in this nation, then I personally believe that people support and the work you do will shine you through. And that, I think, is something that I wanted a platform to be able to serve better, to be able to implement my ideas better, to be able to be a voice that ensures that a positive impact can be made in nation building. I am doing that. So what I will be 10 years from now will perhaps be a report card of what I have achieved during my journey as a parliamentarian, as a human being, as a political person, as well as belonging to a political party which is deeply rooted to doing more service than politics.
प्रियंका जी, मेरा बस एक सवाल है. मतलब I was not intending to ask questions because AB and Josna were continuing, but one of your comments intrigued me a little. You mentioned about women empowerment quite a number of times throughout the conversation, but you left a political party because of the reasons a woman was treated. You know, if we look at our societal structure, and especially in the Indian society, on one hand, we glamorize women empowerment with Bollywood films, with Navratri celebration, with Women's Day celebration. And on the other side, the crimes against women have been increasing tremendously. I would like to ask a woman politician on how can changes happen when political parties do not treat their own women respectfully, and what changes needs to be inculcated, especially from the political side of the spectrum, to or is it that structural changes in the society cannot be cured by politics or activism? What needs to change at the political spectrum as far as women empowerment is concerned?
You know, the reason why I keep bringing up women empowerment, simply, I'll give you my own background of my story. I come from a family which has 4 daughters. Yeah, I'm the third daughter. And in terms of responsibilities, because my father had migrated from Uttar Pradesh and he had moved to Bombay, his first thought was to marry us off. And for our education, if we were lucky to have husbands who understood what we wanted, for them to allow us to continue our education. Working for women in the community I come from is very rare and far between. So I have tried to break those barriers at every point in time. I remember when I started working, when I was in my BCom, first year BCom, my father was totally against it. He said, what would people think, that probably the father cannot afford bringing up the 5 children. That's why he's sending his daughter to work. It was my grandmother who stood up and said that if she wants to do something, you should be supporting her rather than discouraging her. So those were the boundaries that you tend to challenge, and you tend to move forward so that the person who's following after you would be able to take this forward. So that's why I have, I would say, not totally lived the struggles through what other women have, but I have also had my part of the struggle. In terms of politics, I have been absolutely uncompromising on women's dignity, women's honor, and their self-respect. Because if you expect women to just keep compromising on that, then you are actually, I would say, compromising on the cause that you are fighting. And that is the sole purpose where it came as a tipping point in my life, that would I want to stand for being bullied like this, for being misbehaved with like this? Or is it time for me to just end all of this, go back home, be with my family, who had been very supportive and allowed me to continue following my career in a different city. I was in Delhi living all by myself. My family, my husband was handling the 2 children at home so that they could, not have to move baggage to Delhi. So that was the tipping point in my life. And I decided, if I don't stand up for my self-respect or for my honor, then I lose all rights to be able to speak for other women. So that's one reason. The thing that political parties really need to do is to stop treating it so casually that women can be misbehaved with, or any male coming and saying all kinds of things to a woman. The woman needs to be tough-skinned, thick-skinned, and any rampant rumor can go on about her. Any defamatory words can be spoken about her. Just because you're in politics and you have a public position does not mean you have to listen to all kinds of rumors floating about you. So, first political party that needs to do is to speak up for women, and not just speak up for them. Your implementation of what you're speaking is also equally important. So you can go on various platforms and say, oh, 33% reservation चाहिए. अरे आप अपनी खुद की political parties में कोई 33% reservation नहीं करते हो, ticket distribution में 33% reservation नहीं करते हो, संगठन में लोगों को रखने के लिए 33% reservation महिलाओं को नहीं देखते हो. You do not actively ask women to come join politics and show them a roadmap forward as to how women will be taken forward into the system. So those are struggles that women are going through and across political parties. So that is something that political parties will need to show through their actions, not just merely by using words that, oh, we believe in women empowerment. Oh, I think 50% women should be in the parliament. But if you are not doing anything internally in your party, you have no right to continue talking about some policy which is till now not happened. So political parties need to do that and inspire that sense of confidence even in any woman to be able to join politics. That yes, when she joins politics, she will get the respect. She will get the respect for what she's doing. She will not be sidelined because they feel that this particular person, that she cannot do better than someone else or her male counterpart. And understand the shortcomings of a woman also, that there could be some areas where she may not be able to contribute as much as the male member does as far as the physical work is concerned, but she's equally determined and committed. So that's one. And the reason why you see growing numbers is because the patriarchal society that we live in, we continue to see these off-the-cuff remarks coming from people from positions of power, continue to do this. No action taken against people who end up making misogynistic comments, end up making comments which are derogatory. So those are very minute things when you start to implement. But the minute you implement, you will see a sea of change. Even from a male's point of view, he will tend to respect a woman more when he sees more women in public spaces. He sees more women in the society working in various sectors, not just in politics, but even in their corporate houses, even in entertainment zones, entertainment industry, wherever. So the minute you see more women, you tend to take that as a normal practice. It's not something which is out of ordinary, it is normal. When you have opinionated women, it is part of the culture, the society. So once you start treating both genders as equal in society, then I think perhaps you'll be able to make that change and get more law and order also in place. It's all about patriarchy and how you look at women.
It will be, and like my mother says, it will be easier said than done.
Words matter. Whatever you say to a boy, to a girl, and I've always said to my friends who are very senior women journalists and editor, I admire them. Whether I agree with their views or not on a political issue, that's a separate. But fact is, they get trolled. Unkind things are said to them. If something was said to me, I stay upset for 2 days. I don't know how they take what they take on Twitter. And from people who don't know them, who have no idea of who they are, those people are not achieved anything. So I think it's very brave, and I think it prepares you for being focused on what you are. But I think it's, it does impact any person. Words are how you say, what you say is equally important as the message. So I think you're very brave, and we salute you for that. And you pretty much led by example by quitting. And I'm going to send you that video immediately, and to everyone, right, you will enjoy it. And by the way, my daughter is called Prarthana.
Superb.
Yeah. She's writing a book also. This is, of course, be edited. This is not. It's called It's called Supergirl, because she likes this. What is the Canadian superwoman? What is her name? Lily Singh. Because Prarthana likes Lily Singh. She likes Lily Singh. She likes Prajakta Kohli, and I'm sure she would know. She's very aware. She would know about you also. I'll tell her that we interviewed you today. So she watches a little bit of news TV, and she's very aware. 16-year-olds are very, very aware. So, and they're very politically. They're also smart. Very politically aware. Engaged, I don't know smart, but they're aware. They have opinions, and they are able to see through what's happening. So it's don't think that they are fools. They know exactly why a politician is doing. I mean, they can figure out a lot. I can't say everything.
Yeah.
They understand. So anyway, thank you, Priyanka ji. We wish you luck in your endeavors, and we look forward to communicating and interacting with you. And if we at Business World can be in any way a catalyst in your journey or your good intent leading to good action, we'd be very happy to be that. And we wish you all the best.
And can I say, Anurag, you've been a biggest support to me. So thank you so much for everything. And I'm deeply obliged to everyone who has had only positive things to say about me and motivate me to do better.